Oh, John Kerry's Mideast peace talks have gone nowhere. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for the Council for the National Interest at councilforthenationalinterest.org. U.S. military and financial support for Israel's permanent occupations of the West Bank and Gaza Strip is immoral, and it threatens national security by helping generate terrorist attacks against our country. And face it, it's bad for Israel, too. Without our unlimited support, they would have much more incentive to reach a lasting peace with their neighbors. It's past time for us to make our government stop making matters worse. Help support CNI at councilforthenationalinterest.org. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. This is my show, The Scott Horton Show. Our first guest on the show today is Charles Goyette. He is still America's most independent talk show host. His website is charlesgoyette.com, and he's the author of The Dollar Meltdown and also Red and Blue and Broke All Over, which both of those things are exactly the things I really want to talk about on the show today. Welcome back, Charles. How are you doing?
Scott, it's great to talk to you, my friend.
Well, very happy to have you here, and it's really great to hear to hear you back on the radio at all. And then the bonus is you're interviewing Ron Paul all the time. I guess you guys do a short thing every day that plays on AM radios across the country, and then the 15-minute or now half-hour podcast every Friday, right?
That's basically it. We actually do twice-a-day radio commentaries on about 125 stations around the country. So most stations, they run them when they want, but usually they run one in morning drive and one in afternoon drive. So just short packages that we do commentary on the things that are going on in the news. It's a great deal of fun. We do 10 of those a week, twice a day, 5 days a week. And then we do the longer podcast, which is a chance to talk to Ron at length about the issues that are on the news, and we just expanded that to add other guests in there as well. So we spend 15 minutes or so with Ron, and then 15 minutes or so with somebody else. Most recently, people like David Stockman, former Reagan budget director, or Pat Buchanan is the current one that's up and available now. And so it's a good opportunity to get to get more people in under Ron's umbrella and let them get heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's so exciting, just kind of vicarious, knowing that, I mean, it's the magic of AM radio. I've always loved radio, ever since I was a little kid. And this is exactly why, the vicarious thing about knowing somebody else just heard the thing that I just also heard that I thought was so important and that I wish everybody else had heard too, and that some people did, and isn't that great? And that's what I love about Ron Paul so much, is that even though he's not perfect on everything by my standards, I mean 99.999 times out of 100, if you throw the dart at the board, he's going to get it right on virtually everything. And with all the stuff going on, and then of course you're no CNN hairdo either. You know what you're talking about as well as he does. So, and just to imagine all the people, the strangers who accidentally are flipping through their dial, turn off the iPod for a minute and see what's on the AM radio for a moment, and hear you and Ron Paul twice a day, every day, across the country like that. I just think it's so great. And
we're so proud of it.
You're recruiting libertarians moment by moment. I mean, it's unreal.
And most of these people, you can go through an entire American life and never hear the perspective of somebody that's interested in protecting human freedom and advancing human prosperity among free people. You never really hear that. You just get the same status talking points everywhere you go, from the left and the right, status talking points all day, all throughout the media. And so now for I guess the first time, and I mean, it's not as though we couldn't catch Ron Paul, but it was always just luck. If you happen to see him on, I don't know, Neil Cavuto, if you were watching it, or if you happen to hear him someplace, that's great. And it was fortunate, it was lucky, and during the presidential primaries in 2008 and 2012, it was a lot easier to catch him. But now you got people that go through their daily routine. A guy gets up in the morning, he shaves at the same time, he goes to work at the same time, wife comes home, picks up the kids on her way home, whatever it may be, day after day after day after day, on the issues that people are talking about or concerned about in the world. On that day, they get a chance to hear a non-statist, non-big government, freedom-oriented commentary, the sort of take on things that they just never hear. So I think it's tremendously effective, I think.
Hey, listen, so here's the other thing about it, is that now all the podcasts are running at antiwar.com on the blog there, and very happy to see you back there at antiwar.com. And I do hope that gives you extra little incentive to make sure and always cover some foreign policy on the show, and put foreign policy first, because it is the most important thing. And one of the things you were talking about with Ron in the last interview there, it started out about the Bundy Ranch and all of that, but one of the things he said at the end was toward the end of the interview, y'all were talking about just people's beliefs and attitudes about what to do in crisis, because, as he put it, our current foreign policy and our current domestic policy, they're just not sustainable, and pretty much everybody knows that. Nobody really knows exactly how the end is going to come or when it's going to come to the current system, but we're pretty much everybody agrees we're a car with no brakes going downhill kind of a thing right now. And so then the real question is, what all we've got to do about it, or what to do when the crisis comes in order to prevent everybody from just making things worse. And I guess I'll set up the point one more way, and that is that something that Pat Buchanan, who you just mentioned, is included in that next interview, with Ron there. Something that he wrote about recently is about the rise of ethno-nationalism around the world, especially in response to the economic crisis. When people are more or less doing okay, or it seems like they're on the ups, their resentments kind of subside. But now them and those and theys and all the different people who are part of some other group, not us, now all of a sudden they're the problem, decide many billions of people around the world apparently start. And also it's a lot easier to pick on people who don't have power, like the minority group in your local country where you live. And so people fall for that kind of thing a lot. So I was hoping that you would have better recommendations for us than where it looks like we're going. And maybe, first of all, if you could convince the people maybe just how bad the situation is, that we need to be talking along these lines, if I can ask the question backwards.
Sure. Well, clearly, there are so many fronts to talk about, foreign policy and so on, but let me talk about the monetary front, because it is very clear the monetary system is failing. And for those that don't watch it, it may seem as though, well, Charles, if you say it's failing, it must be in slow motion because I see little changes dated. But for those of us that track this thing carefully, it's moving it's really moving at light speed. And you see signs of it in the defiance of the rest of the world of America's monetary hegemony. You see, for example, in the sanctions on Russia, you see other strange bedfellows being brought together. Who would ever believe the close bilateral relationships and monetary relationships that are being developed between ancient enemies like China and Russia? And yet they are, as a defensive posture, since they both have a nervous eye cast over their shoulder at the United States and its military hegemony, and the fraudulent monetary system that the world is up to its eyeballs in. And none of these countries mind deceiving and defrauding their own people with their own fiat money, but they just ultimately don't want to be stuck too badly with ours. And so you see, that we pass out sanctions willy-nilly as though it's the first tool of foreign diplomacy is to slap sanctions on somebody. And so the countries that are the recipients of our sanctions are starting to find one another. And you see bilateral, multilateral deals. You see trading relationships between Iran and Russia that escape or end-run the dollar. It's hard to believe that anybody with any real knowledge of the importance of the dollar to what we have left of our prosperity would be in a hurry, like our diplomats are, to hasten its demise. But the surest way, necessity is the mother of invention, the surest way to accelerate the development of global alternatives to the dollar standard is to slap sanctions on major countries and major producers so that they have to invent alternatives, and whether they're, primitive barter arrangements and we'll give you grain and you give us gold, or we'll give you gold and you give us oil, or whatever it may be, they will find solutions. And those solutions are being developed under our eyes now. So it spells the end of the dollar standard. And, what just to harken back to what you've described earlier, the failure of the dollar standard is already baked into events. I mean, the promises to pay that can't be met are very, very real. There are people depending on governmental promises for their power bill, to pay their water bill, to pay their doctor, to buy their medicine, to pay their mortgage, to keep food on the table. And those promises cannot be fulfilled. I mean, it's just, unless the laws of mathematics have been repealed, it's just impossible for the government to fulfill the exorbitant promises that it's made, yet people are depending on it. So this spells the end of the current monetary regime, the current monetary situation. And the question that you've asked is, then how do we emerge on the other side? And it's not guaranteed. It's be very nice to think that, we would see the failure of this statist failed monetary system, the failure of, our costly, our bankrupting foreign policy, and emerge on the other side with sound money and free people and a non-interventionist nation, or a non-interventionist people that don't go interfering around the rest of the world. But to tell you the truth, you've also dangled a hint in front of us, too, that, that when trouble strikes, when a crisis occurs, that governments begin to look for, they begin to search for a scapegoat that they can blame for problems of their own making. And this is a very dangerous period when this when a system breaks down like this.
Well, blame it on me, like this lousy outro. We got to go to break. We'll be right back with Charles Goyette, y'all. You hate government, one of them libertarian types, or maybe you just can't stand the president, gun grabbers, or warmongers. Me too. That's why I invented LibertyStickers.com. Well, Rick owns it now, and I didn't make up all of them, but still, if you're driving around and want to tell everyone else how wrong their politics are, there's only one place to go. LibertyStickers.com has got your bumper covered. Left, right, libertarian, empire, police, state, founders quote, central banking. Yes, bumper stickers about central banking. Lots of them. And, well, everything that matters. LibertyStickers.com. Everyone else's stickers suck. We got Charles Goyette on the line, and I'm sorry, I asked a big, dumb, stupid, clumsy question at the beginning there about just how bad it is financial-wise, and just how bad it could be after the next big economic collapse, and then what we got to do about it, and how we're going to set about doing the right thing.
Scott, it's my view that it's way too late, and I think this is what you're alluding to in the thread that you've identified in both the conversations with Dr. Paul and Pat Buchanan, that it's far too late after the crisis to build a group of people that really understand the nature of the crisis, how we got into it, that it didn't just happen because of the phase of the moon or the Jupiter transiting the 10th house or whatever it was, that this is the consequence of bad policies. It is far too late after the crisis to begin to educate people, because something else begins to evolve to take its place immediately. And that has to be the work of your listeners and people that understand the nature of the problem before it collapses. And so this puts a heavy burden, I think, on all of us that are concerned with human freedom and human prosperity. It puts a heavy burden on us to improve our own understanding of the way liberty works, and to share this understanding with as many people as possible as quickly as we can. We really, we don't have to have a majority, but we have to have people of clear insight that understand the underlying principles, so they aren't dissuaded or they aren't susceptible to the sleight of hand of the next statist that comes along with the magic solution of all of our problems if we just turn all of the power of our lives over to him. So the job now is, during the decay, is to awaken people to what we need to do in the aftermath of the decay that is already set in process. In other words, it can't be redeemed. American foreign policy can't be redeemed. America's monetary recklessness. It's too late. This is the hangover. We're headed into the hangover. The problem could have been solved if we didn't drink as much last night, but it's too late, when you get into the hangover phase. Well, that's where we are, and that's why our economy has been so broken and so crippled. We're in the hangover phase, and so we need to know what to do and why freedom works, why free markets work, why central planning always fails, why control of prices and price interference always make situations worse, because these are the first tools of the status. And on the other side of this, we will be presented the opportunity to have more statism, more price controls, price intervention, central economic planning by the very same kind of authorities that got us into this mess to begin with. So we really need people to begin to learn to understand the why the principles of freedom serve us well.
Well, this is one good thing about having the Democrats win in '08. Just a couple of weeks after the stock market crashed there, was that, if McCain had won, they were already trying to push the myth that George Bush was somehow Ron Paul, and that we had had 8 years of small government libertarianism, and that was what had caused the crash. But the election of Obama really killed that fake narrative, because you just can't get away with that at the same time you're calling him FDR, that you're going to say that this is still the free market when everything is going the way that it is. And yet, that it's kind of hard for people to get over that on the right and the left too. I mean, it's just the assumption is that whatever went wrong, it was the unregulated part that got away. I mean, and Charles, seriously, think about what you're saying. When you say what we need is free markets, you got to understand why free markets work. You're asking people to believe that if you give corporate chieftains more leeway to get away with murder, they'll get away with less murder somehow magically. That's what they hear you say. On the right and the left. So what about that? What about accountability for the people who create these terrible crises for us?
Well, I mean, I think they should be accountable, and when they make reckless decisions, they should go bankrupt. And their shareholders should suffer a severe pain because they put, incompetence in charge of their affairs. But instead, since it's not a free market economy, we ride to their rescue with your money in mine. They dip into your wallet and your listeners' wallets and my wallets to bail these people out from their mistakes. Now, system, how does any organism improve if it's insulated from the consequences of its very own mistakes? But of course, that's what the Fed does in the economy, and what Congress does. They let boneheads make mistakes because, look, Scott, it's exactly like people investing in Greek debt or Ukrainian debt. They don't care that the risk is too high. They don't care that the return is high, the interest return is high, because it reflects the untenable risk involved in loaning to governments like Ukraine that have already defaulted a couple of times to the IMF. They don't care. The interest return is high, and then if Ukraine can't pay back its bankers, it's okay, because the IMF will use money laundered from the American people through the IMF to pay the banks back themselves. So there is no risk to them. So they have erected a monetary and investment, a political and business system of corporate fascism, in which the profits are privatized. When they make a profit, they keep it, but the losses and the risks are socialized, and you pay for the losses.
All right, now I saw this Doug Casey video that was supposed to scare the crap out of me, and it kind of did. And it was along the lines of what you write in your book, The Dollar Meltdown, that, we have our bubble crash because of the Fed, the boom and bust. But you can only abuse that for so long before actually people just quit believing in your phony, crappy paper money at all. And then you have a situation like Weimar Germany or perennial Argentina or Zimbabwe or something where all markets and contracts are broken in every way because the money just becomes worthless. And so that's a lot different than a dot-com crash or a 2008 crash where, hey, at least they can inflate another bubble, if not let us have a sound economy. At that point, there is no inflate another bubble. At that point, it's kind of start over from scratch. But you think that that's the danger that we're really in here. Not that we're facing another stock market bubble crash, but that we're facing a dollar bubble crash, and that really not just the end of hegemony. What you're saying that means is basically hyperinflation, the end of the greenback.
It is. This is the biggest of all bubbles. I mean, it's one thing to have a dot-com bubble, and the damage is more or less limited. I suppose you could say it's limited. The dot-com bubble cost Americans trillions, $5 trillion roughly, just in the stock market. The housing bubble cost them $7 trillion, but the cost is much bigger than that. I mean, millions of unemployed. You have Depression-era levels of unemployment to this day. You had millions, 4 million homes foreclosed on. I saw the other day that over 9 million homes are still seriously underwater. People use the savings of a lifetime to keep afloat. There goes what hope for retirement they had. So it's more than just the loss, but this bubble is the biggest of all. This is a global bubble. It's not just the United States that is printing money willy-nilly. It's it's all the central banks of the world that have blown up their balance sheets to extraordinary heights, and so it is a systemic crisis of the monetary system. And we see the evidence that it's going to break in. Well, I'll tell you. Since you're coming up on a break, I guess I won't tell you, but it is.
No, you got a couple of minutes here, 2.5, 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, very vaguely, or just generally, all of this money printing has been more or less inert. In other words, the money has been printed. It's not just shrink wrapped and sitting in the basements of the Fed. It's been used to buy things. Buy mortgage securities, take these mortgage securities that are troubled off the balance sheet of the banks, oh, great for them, and put it onto the balance sheet of the U.S. dollar to buy the downgraded debt of the U.S. Treasury. All of that money, though, has been sitting in just humming, about ready. It's been in a containment unit. But now we see the signs of it leaking out. Loans, bank loans, commercial leases are beginning to grow. And when those things happen, that's a sign of that money beginning to enter the general consumer economy and to begin to bid up prices. And that's why you see prices of virtually everything starting to move. Beef really high. Oh, it's just the drought. Okay, coffee really high. Oh, it's just the drought, or it's the coffee. Okay, that's just okay. Rent prices. Oh, rent, that's the freeze. It's always something, but prices are beginning to start to tick up now, and we're in the very, very earliest stages of this money beginning to work its way, of the trillions of dollars, of the $2.5 trillion of adjusted bank reserves beginning to find their way into the consumer economy now to bid up the prices of things that we all purchase every day.
And then, so you think it's already a done deal that it's going to come to that where the dollar will just break and we'll have to start using alternative currencies and start from scratch with the economy?
Well,
I mean, obviously there are a lot of factories that'll still be sitting on their foundation, so it's not like we'll have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and Social Security recipients may still get their $800 or $1,200 check, but it won't be enough to buy them what it bought last year, and so the crisis gets more severe. The living standards of the people will decline very, very clearly. And yes, it's true that some people can continue to still use the dollar, even its weakened form, and this has been the case in prior inflations in the country. People still continue to use the dollar, but we have all the elements of a police state. All the infrastructure in place already. And so what happens is when people begin to try to find a more sound, a more dependable alternative to a failing currency, and that's when the elements of the police state kick in to force people to use the state's currency. Look, there's no point in the state inflating anymore. There's no point in the state printing funny money if people refuse to use it. It's only the people begin holding that money and letting it depreciate, letting the purchasing power evaporate while it's in their pocket or in their bank account or in their piggy bank that makes it worthwhile for the state to engage in this activity. So at some point, as people begin to evacuate the state's money, as they begin to leave, the state has to begin to implement police state powers to force people to continue to use its currency rather than an alternative. This could be a very ugly period in the affairs of a culture.
Yeah. Well, and that's where it goes back to, when it's really a crisis, what are people going to think? That prices keep rising, so they better keep printing even more money so they can give some to me so I can afford these incredibly rising prices. Or they better use their power to put a cap on prices. It's unfair to charge them more than $10 for a loaf of bread. And you know how people are when they, especially when it comes in a crisis. Like you're saying, we got to have people, a bit inoculated from that kind of fear-based thinking in a crisis like that. But so now here's where I'm really going with this, though, is, if everybody turns on the state and the, Wall Street bankers, that's fine by me, the militarists and all that. But what I'm really worried about is people turning on each other. And, think back to 2006. That was supposedly at the height of the bubble, right? That was the good times. And yet the good times meant extra Mexican immigrants coming to frame houses. And so, Lou Dobbs and all of those guys, and the entire right wing went on a holy jihad against Mexican immigrants. They're so easy to pick on. Nobody can even understand a thing that they say. And it's so easy for them to act just like that. Nobody even really calls them on it, or they do, but to no effect. They get to just, completely run rampant, scapegoating the weak. And I just wonder whether, you think we got a prayer, or whether, this dollar breaks, this society is going to tear itself apart too.
Oh, sure. It's inevitable that it will tear itself apart, and they will probably, there will be a lot of anger and resentment at the wealthy. So instead of targeting the people that are the cronies, that are the beneficiaries of ill-gotten gains, they'll target people that have, real wealth that they actually created, that they deserve, that they saved, begin to deplete it so they can distribute it to the large populous numbers where the electoral support lies. So yeah, it becomes, listen, this becomes a war of all against all. And, the world has gone through this so many times before. You see it, we have living laboratory experiments of this going on in places in South America right now, like, Venezuela and Argentina. And, before long, then thugs start beating up other thugs in the street, and people go out and protest, and they demand the government give them something, but the government doesn't have anything to give. The only things the government ever gives away are things that it steals from somebody else. So the more severe the crisis gets, the more desperate the political actors, the governing classes become to keep the mobs on their side, to buy their affection. So they have to go out and start stealing, more and more. And all of a sudden, all the things that make for a prosperous economy, like the ability to save, are endangered, are threatened. The stability of the currency is threatened. The options for alternatives to an unstable or irresponsibly managed currency threatened. Also, all the things that produce wealth come under attack, and the state can certainly divide wealth. They have the most guns. They can divide the wealth, but once the wealth is all divided, the pot is empty.
All right, so what would you do then? Just pull the e-brake and that's it. No more Pentagon. No more inflation. Abolish the central bank. Everybody's got to have 100% gold standard from now on, or you go to jail. And
no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to impose a monetary system on the people. Look, we know from the economic behavior of people over the course of thousands of years. We know from principles like Gresham's law that bad money drives out good when there's a failed or an inferior money. Yeah, we know that people act in their own self-interest. Get rid of the legal tender laws. Let people use what they want to trade in. And then Paul Krugman and Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen could trade in special drawing rights of the IMF if they want to. I don't think their grocer is going to want to take it. I don't think anybody's going to want to write a contract in those terms because it's just another fiat, another made-up money. But let alternative currencies begin to thrive, and believe you me, the wheat gets separated from the chaff very, very fast. But the legal tender laws are an impediment to that right now. And so they badly need to be repealed, or what happens is we find that in the failure of the monetary system, in the failure of the dollar standard, there is no alternative that enables commerce to keep on ticking. Other inflations that we've talked about, inflations in banana republics and so on, at least the people have, for all of its failings, have had the dollar in the background, so they could somehow keep, they keep commerce going. That was in the Weimar Republic, there was the pound sterling that people were able to use to keep commerce going to some extent. In the United States, it's virtually illegal to try to use another standard for commerce, and the courts will not enforce contracts in non-dollar denominated terms the way or gold terms the way they will dollar contracts. So the legal tender laws make it very hard for a robust alternative to a failing currency to develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know whether Bitcoin is the most saleable commodity in any given market or not, but they didn't really get a chance to see in the market up against the Federal Reserve note because the government ruled, right? A court upheld the IRS, or at least the IRS regulation is that it's not a currency, it's a commodity, and it's taxed like all the rest. And so
And some commodities are taxed even worse. You know, the taxation on gold is even extra punitive. I mean, they say it's a commodity like, I don't know, cotton balls from Johnson & Johnson in your medicine chest. They say it's a commodity like any other, but for some reason, this particular commodity has to be treated to extra severe taxation. So you can see the war against sound currencies, sound monetary alternatives already in development in this.
Right. All right. Hey, listen, I've already kept you way over time. Thanks so much for your time, Charles. I'll let you go.
Scott, great to talk to you. You do great work.
Appreciate it.
See you guys.
All right, everybody. That is the great Charles Goyette. CharlesGoyette.com is his website, and you can sign up for his financial newsletter and also read his great books, and they're really great, too. The Dollar Meltdown and Red, Blue, and Broke all over. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for CashIntoCoins.com. So you want to buy some Bitcoins? CashIntoCoins.com makes it fast, easy, and safe to get Bitcoins. Just deposit the money into their account at any of the major banks they support, and then just email them a picture of the receipt and your Bitcoin address, and you get your Bitcoins. Almost always the same day it clears. In a tough, competitive new market, CashIntoCoins.com has the advantage. A great system and great customer service to keep you coming back. That's CashIntoCoins.com. Just click the link in the right margin at scotthorton.org. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for The Future of Freedom, the monthly journal of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Edited by libertarian purist Sheldon Richman, The Future of Freedom brings you the best of our movement, featuring articles by Richman, Jacob Hornberger, James Bovard, and many more. The Future of Freedom stands for peace and liberty, and against our criminal world empire and Leviathan state. Subscribe today. It's just $25 per year for the back pocket-sized print edition, $15 per year to read it online. That's The Future of Freedom at fff.org/subscribe. Peace and freedom. Thank you. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for WallStreetWindow.com. Mike Swanson knows his stuff. He made a killing running his own hedge fund and always gets out of the stock market before the government-generated bubbles pop, which is, by the way, what he's doing right now, selling all his stocks and betting on gold and commodities. Sign up at WallStreetWindow.com and get real-time updates from Mike on all his market moves. It's hard to know how to protect your savings and earn a good return in an economy like this. Mike Swanson can help. Follow along on paper and see for yourself. WallStreetWindow.com. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here. Are you a libertarian and or peacenik? Live in North America? If you want, you could hire me to come and give a speech to your group. I'm good on the terror war and intervention, civil liberty stuff, blaming Woodrow Wilson for everything bad in the world, Iran, central banking, political realignment, and, well, you know, everything. I can teach markets to liberals and peace to the right. Just watch me. Check out scotthorton.org/speeches for some examples and email me scott@scotthorton.org for more information. See you there.